She called 911 on me right there on my own front porch. Within 10 minutes, my quiet inherited home turned into a crime scene, flashing red and blue lights, neighbors gawking from their porches, kids frozen mid-bike ride. And all because the HOA president across the street decided that my grandfather's land, my land, belonged to her. I was still holding the coffee I hadn't even taken a sip of when she shouted, "Your grandfather's property is HOA land now," like she was declaring it into existence. Her name was Evelyn Hart, the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, late 50s blonde curls lacquered stiff, the kind of smile that never reaches her eyes. I'd only moved back last week after inheriting this old house, my grandfather's refuge from the city. The place still smelled faintly of cedar and dust the way it always did when I was a kid. I thought I'd found peace. Instead, I found Evelyn. When she stormed up to my gate, jabbing a finger at me like I'd stolen something, I thought she was kidding. "Your grandfather agreed to transfer this property to the community," she said. "Show me the documents," I asked, trying to stay calm, "because I've got his will notarized and filed with the county." But she just smirked. "We have a community understanding." Then, right in front of me, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "There's a trespasser blocking HOA territory," she said loudly enough for half the street to hear. My heart sank. This woman was really calling the cops on me for standing on my own porch. When Deputy Aaron Blake arrived, the tension was thick enough to choke on. He stepped out of his patrol car, calm, professional, and looked between us. "Sir, can I see proof of ownership?" he asked. My hands were trembling when I passed him the folder. Grandfather's deed from 1978. The probate transfer order. Everything in perfect order. He flipped through it carefully, then looked up at Evelyn. "These documents look legitimate, ma'am. Do you have anything showing the HOA owns this land?" Evelyn's face twitched. "We've been maintaining this property line for years," she stammered. "Understanding isn't legal transfer," Blake said flatly. The silence that followed was deafening. Evelyn's cheeks turned red, then pale, then red again. The deputy warned her about filing false reports and left me standing there on the porch, my neighbors whispering like I'd just escaped jail. Evelyn walked off, but the look in her eyes said one thing loud and clear: this wasn't over. The next morning, I opened my gate to find a welcome new HOA member basket. Cookies, flowers, and a bill, a $75 monthly fee for lawn maintenance, parking enforcement, paint approvals. I laughed out loud. The audacity. They were charging me for services they didn't even have authority to perform. It was like getting a restaurant bill for a meal you never ordered. I started asking around. Martha Green, my neighbor with the perfect rose garden, said she'd lived here 30 years. "Your grandfather never joined the HOA," she told me. He was proud of that. Independent. Paid for his own trash collection, snow removal, everything. But Evelyn didn't care about facts. Within days, the harassment began. First, the lawn service stopped showing up. Then, the hardware store refused to sell me supplies. Community policy, the owner muttered, eyes full of guilt. Grocery delivery, canceled. Even the local diner claimed they don't deliver to restricted addresses. It felt like I'd been exiled inside my own home. A modern-day blacklist orchestrated by one power-drunk woman. That's when the doubt hit me. Late at night, sitting alone under the old oak tree, I started wondering if I was the problem. Maybe fighting wasn't worth it. Maybe I should just sell the property and walk away. It was my grandfather's dream, not mine. But then my eyes caught something, a rusted survey nail embedded in the bark exactly where he'd told me years ago. This tree marks where the community stops and the family begins. That memory snapped something awake in me. No, I wasn't going to run. Not when he'd spent decades building this boundary, this proof of independence. The next morning I found a small brass key tied behind that nail, old, weathered, but intentional. My neighbor Walter, the retired electrician who'd been quietly watching all this unfold, saw me holding it and said, "Your grandfather believed in documenting truth." He planned for this. His words stuck with me. Later that week, Evelyn escalated. A certified letter arrived from her attorney threatening to place a lien on my home for unpaid HOA fees. It looked official until I read the details. Every code she cited actually supported my ownership. Either her lawyer was clueless or she'd lied to him about jurisdiction. And then came the county inspector sent because of anonymous reports about unpermitted structures and electrical hazards. I knew exactly who'd made them. But the inspector, a calm man with a clipboard and a tired smile, walked through every inch of the house. After an hour, he said, "In 20 years of inspection work, I've rarely seen a property this well maintained. Whoever filed these reports wasted our time." He wrote it down, signed it, and handed me the copy. "You'll want to keep that," he added. Oh, I did. But Evelyn wasn't done. She turned the neighborhood against me through rumor and fear. People crossed the street to avoid me. A nervous neighbor whispered, "Evelyn said you're suing the HOA to destroy property values." I felt sick. My grandfather had once saved this woman's house during a flood, pumped her basement by hand according to Martha's old photos. And this was how she repaid him. When she started a whisper campaign about me using legal loopholes and blocking public paths, I realized it wasn't ignorance, it was manipulation. She was poisoning the well, one neighbor at a time. That weekend, I decided to fight fire with truth. I built a display in my yard, old family photos, birthdays, graduations, barbecues, all showing the same background marker. The HOA ends here, sign by the oak tree. The sign had been there for decades, in every picture unchanging. It was proof no one could fake. As neighbors started stopping by, Evelyn showed up too, red-faced, shaking. She stormed through the crowd shouting, "These old decorations don't prove anything," and then she grabbed my grandfather's bamboo wind chime, the one he'd made by hand, and smashed it against the porch rail. The sound cracked like a gunshot. For a moment, everything froze. Then, phones came out recording. Evelyn realized too late that she'd just committed vandalism in front of half the neighborhood. That was her first real mistake. The second came when Walter stepped forward and said, voice steady, "Ms. Hart, that's destruction of private property witnessed by a dozen people." You could hear the shift in the air. Evelyn's authority, her mask, her little empire, it all started to crumble. I thought that was the end. I was wrong. Days later, a county survey agent knocked on my door. "We've received a request to review the tax classification of your address," he said. I almost laughed. She was trying to steal my land through paperwork now. He reviewed my documents, shook his head and said, "Everything checks out. Someone's wasting government resources." Another report for my growing pile of evidence. That evening, Walter came over serious for once. "Noah," he said quietly, "it's time you know who I am." He wasn't just a retired electrician. He was one of the founders of the HOA back when it was formed in 2005. "I helped write the original charter," he said. "We marked the boundary at your grandfather's oak tree for a reason to protect independent properties like yours." Evelyn's been trying to undo that for years. He told me about a waterproof container buried near that tree, something my grandfather and the original committee left behind for proof if corruption ever took root. That night, under flashlight beams and the buzz of cicadas, Walter and I dug beneath the oak's roots until the shovel hit metal. Inside a sealed box were documents, official stamps, signatures, dated surveys. The HOA Charter. The words were clear as daylight. HOA jurisdiction terminates at the oak tree survey marker. Properties beyond this division remain private under county authority. I almost laughed from relief. 20 years of truth buried under a few inches of dirt. The next evening, the entire neighborhood gathered, curiosity, gossip tension thick in the air. Deputy Blake stood by just in case. Walter stepped up and pulled back a curtain of overgrown vines, revealing the original rusted sign, HOA ends here, estate in 2005. The crowd gasped. Evelyn went pale. "Here's your proof," I said. "You've been trying to override 20 years of law because you felt entitled to it." She shouted back, voice trembling. "Times change. The community's needs come first." Then louder, almost screaming. "Private property shouldn't outweigh community." That was it. The mask was gone. She'd admitted what this was really about, not law, not confusion, but control. Walter stepped forward holding the documents. "I was chairman of the founding committee. These are the original papers signed and filed with the county." He passed them to Deputy Blake, who flipped through each page carefully before saying, "These appear authentic. Ms. Hart, your actions violate your own organization's charter." Evelyn's lips trembled. "You're lying. Those could be forged." She tried, but no one bought it. Walter had witness statements, correspondence with county officials, even utility bills proving the HOA stopped at post number 3. Every lie she'd built was collapsing in real time. The emergency HOA meeting that followed sealed her fate. Residents packed the community hall. The vote to remove her passed 32-0. She didn't even stay to see it walked out in tears before the count ended. By the next morning, Deputy Blake delivered her citations filing false police reports, property destruction, misuse of county resources, HOA misconduct. She was ordered to pay restitution, replace the damaged wind chime, and sign an acknowledgement of the true boundary filed permanently with the county clerk. When she signed, her hand shook so badly the pen scratched the paper, and as she turned to leave, the wind stirred through the oak branches, ringing the new bamboo chime Walter and I had repaired. The same soft melody my grandfather once listened to echoed through the yard. For the first time in weeks, the air felt still. Not peaceful, just settled, like truth had finally taken its rightful place again. People ask if I ever wanted revenge. The truth, no. All I wanted was the silence that follows when lies collapse. That sound is louder than any fine, any lawsuit, any victory speech. Because in the end, truth doesn't need to scream, it just needs to stand.